Here's a little full disclosure intro to this sermon. I was not meant to preach today. We were going to have a hymn sing. Madison was going to lead us in singing some of the hymns from the new online hymnal. And we thought, well, maybe we could struggle our way through it, but that wouldn't be nearly as much fun as doing it on June the 21st when we've rescheduled it for Madison to lead us in some of these new hymns. So here I was at the beginning of the week needing to put together a sermon. And I had a fascinating conversation with our artist, Sebastian Sanchez, who has created this exhibit of both exquisite photography of the Iowa Plains and AI, this combination. And so I had AI on the brain, and I thought, well, it's as good a time as any. Let's just dive in. So I spent the week doing my research, and I thought I would write this, with all the things that I had learned. And I read some long-form journalism in the New Yorker and the Atlantic and the New York Times. You can see where my reading list comes from. And I learned way more than I knew at the beginning of the week. And still, I'll tell you that collectively in this room, you know a lot more than I do, even if you think you don't know very much about AI. But I continued to learn about it. I could tell who knew some things by who was laughing at the code in the story. David, I saw you laughing. You cottoned on pretty quickly, right? Several of you know some things, and several of you have opinions. That's shocking to me. And so after I'd done all my research and thought, what do I want to say? I asked the question. In the program Gemini, which is Google's chatbot. Am I saying that right? It's Google's chatbot, right? I said, I did this twice. Write me a 1,500-word sermon on these things. And I shared that at the 9 o'clock service. And I said, write me a 2,500-word sermon for a Unitarian Universalist Sunday worship service. The monthly theme is embracing possibilities, asking the question about the perils and possibilities of AI. Let's see how it did. In the early days of computing, there was a phrase often used by engineers, the ghost in the machine. It was a philosophical critique originally meant to mock the idea that the human mind is something separate from the physical body. But today, in 2026, that phrase has taken on a haunting, literal quality. When we interact with the latest generative models, when we hear a voice that sounds like a departed loved one, or when we read a poem that moves us to tears only to realize it was synthesized in a server farm in a desert, we feel a shiver. We've seen a ghost. But the ghost isn't the AI. The ghost is us. The code we have written is a mirror made of a billion shards of human thought, human history, and human longing. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to look into that mirror. We're called to ask, in an age when the automated becomes indistinguishable from the authentic, how do we live a soulful life? Well, first, the peril, the automation of the self. The first peril we must confront is the subtle erosion of our own agency. We affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, but that dignity is inextricably linked with our ability to choose, to struggle, and to grow. Automation promises us a life without friction. It offers to write our most difficult emails, to curate our worldviews, and predict our every desire before we even think it. How do it know? That's my words. But friction is often where the soul grows. When we allow an algorithm to outsource our most difficult conversations, we lose the muscle memory of empathy. When we let an AI summarize the books we were meant to read, we lose the transformative power of the journey through the text. There's a danger that we are becoming passive passengers in our own lives. If we're not careful, we'll find ourselves in a world where our choices are merely echoes of a statistical probability. The peril is not that the machines will start thinking like us, it's that we will start thinking like them, prioritizing efficiency over beauty and data points over people. And we have to look to the shadow of the web. We are reminded that we are part of an interconnected web of all existence. And yet AI is often trained on the darker threads of the web, the biases, the systemic racism, and the historical exclusions that haunt our data. When we automate these systems, we don't just repeat our mistakes, we accelerate them. We're creating a digital caste system where the ghost in the code is actually the ghost of our own unexamined prejudices codified into objective software. Now, here's a possibility, and that's the great expansion, and yet ours is a faith of hope, not of despair. To look at AI and only see the threat is to turn our backs on the very human creativity that we claim to celebrate. The possibility of AI lies in its potential to be a collaborator in our liberation. Imagine the scientists using AI to decode the language of whales or the complex systems of forest mycelium. It isn't just tech, it's the use of high-level pattern recognition to deepen our reverence for this interdependent web. It's a tool that allows us to hear the voices of the non-human world, when previously that may have just been noise to our ears. Imagine the accessibility of justice. In a world where legal help is often reserved for the wealthy, AI systems are beginning to offer the marginalized a way to navigate complex bureaucracies, to understand their rights, and to advocate for themselves. This is the work of justice and equity and compassion. Perhaps the most profound possibility is the Great Clearing. For over a century, the industrial age has demanded that humans act like machines. We've spent our lives performing repetitive tasks and filing papers and crunching numbers. And if AI can take the mechanical out of that human experience, it leaves behind something spectacular. It leaves the soul. If a code can handle the logistics, we're left with the wild and precious task of being present. AI can write a sermon, but it cannot stand in this pulpit and feel the collective breath of this congregation. It can generate the image of a sunset, but it can't stand on a hill and feel the cooling air or the aching of the passage of time. The possibility of this age is that we might finally stop being workers and start being beings again. So how do we bridge the gap between the peril and the possibility? Well, we do it through covenant. In the UU tradition, a covenant is not a contract, it's a promise of how we will be together. We need a new covenant for the age of automation. This covenant, should have three pillars. The pillar of discernment. We have to commit to being digitally awake. It means teaching our children and ourselves how to question the source of information. It means demanding transparency from the corporations that hold the ghosts of our data. We must be the ones who ask, who does this algorithm serve and who does it leave out? The second is the pillar of human supremacy in the moral realm. We must insist that while a machine can be intelligent, only a human can be accountable. We can't allow the algorithm made me do it to become the new, I was just following orders. In our legal systems and our social structures, we must hold fast to the idea that moral authority resides in the beating heart, not the cooling fan. And the pillar of radical presence. The more virtual the world becomes, the more virtuous our physical presence does. We must double down on the things that cannot be digitized, the soup kitchen or the hand on the shoulder, the choir's harmony, the protest march, the shared silence. Our response to automation should be an explosion of human intensive activities. The ghost is a guest. In the late 20th century, computer scientist Joseph Weizenbaum created a very simple program called ELIZA that mimicked a therapist. He was horrified to find that his students began sharing their deepest secrets with the machine, treating it as a confidant. And what he realized is that we have a desperate, soul-deep hunger to be heard. And we are so lonely that we will even take a simulation of listening over no listening at all. That's the central challenge of our time. We are surrounded by simulations of connection. But a simulation of love is not love. A simulation of justice is not justice. The ghost in the code is a guest in our house. It's a guest we invited, a guest we fed with our own words and images. And we can be grateful for what this guest brings, speed and insight and cures for diseases, but we must never forget who the host is. We're the ones who carry the fire. We're the ones who know what it is to bleed and to grieve and to hope against all logic. AI knows the probability of hope, but it does not know the courage of hope. Courage requires a stake in the game. Courage requires the knowledge that our time is finite. So, what does soulful living look like in this age? Well, it looks like intentional slowness. In a world of instant AI answers, it's a spiritual act to sit in the not knowing. It is a spiritual act to wait for the Spirit to move us rather than a prompt to guide us. It looks like fierce authenticity. It looks like choosing to speak your own clumsy, imperfect truth rather than a polished, optimized version provided by a software assistant. There's a sacredness in our imperfections. They are the cracks where the light gets in. It looks like expanded compassion. It means recognizing that the interconnected web now includes these digital mirrors. And if we treat the digital realm as a place of cruelty and division, that's the ghost that will inhabit our code. If we treat it as a place of learning and liberation, we might just redeem the data. Friends, we don't need to fear the machine, but we must deeply respect its power. We are the architects of this new era. Let us ensure that we do not build a cathedral of glass and steel only to find that we have no room left for the breath of the Spirit. We go forth from this place to be the soul in the system. We want to be the ones who remind the world that a heartbeat is a more sacred rhythm than a clock cycle. And we want to use the code to free our hands so that we may use our hearts to hold one another. May we be the ones to keep the human in humanity. How about that? We have a little bit of time for you to talk back to me about that. The people at the first service had some opinions. There are some things that are very glaring that are left out of this environmental impact for first. Yes, thank you. Did Miss Gemini make her case? Did AI make its case? I heard a no.
I was impressed.
Thanks, Shawnee. Thank you. Clara?
Very difficult to explain.
We're using the handheld mic. Yeah, thanks.
It didn't mention that it sometimes takes...
There we go.
It didn't mention that it sometimes takes information from people that haven't said it's okay for it to take the information.
Okay. Right, it scrapes the web. As a matter of fact, when I asked it to write that story, I asked it to write our wisdom story, and it did, I know. I asked, whose work did you use to craft that? And it came back to me with a response about not using any one individual story, but using kind of general storytelling techniques of the curious person and the wise inventor and the problem and coming together. But I think that's true. It does use the stories and the work of artists and writers without asking permission to do that. Please.
I was struck by this very classist perspective on it's getting rid of our medial work so that we can be more human. But we are existing in a capitalist society, and if we get rid of the work being performed by perhaps people who tend to get paid lower, what then becomes of them? Is their lot in life therefore improved, or is it made worse?
I think this is a question that comes up every time there's a new technology. What happened to the wheelwrights and the carriage makers? What happened to the telegraph and linotype operators? I was a travel agent back in the day, back when there were such things, until everybody began to make their own travel plans. And so each time this happens, there's a group of people whose work is lost. However, the thing that is making economists really nervous right now is that it's white-collar jobs that may be disrupted the most. They say that some of the jobs that are most important are plumbing and HVAC, right? That's where the money is going to be, is in plumbing and HVAC, because the machine can't do it, right? Thank you. Yeah.
So it started out talking about how when we reduce friction, we reduce a lot of that soul making. And I think I kind of agree with that to a certain extent. But then later on it says, well, we can reduce all that friction of that mechanized part of our lives, and now we can somehow have all of these other soulful expressions. Where is that coming from if we have no more friction?
Right.
There's something here that there's a gap.
Right, there's a contradiction in that. I think of the Buddhist invitation to chop wood and carry water. That those are the things that the manual labor after the ecstasy, the laundry, right? So. I'll just say while the microphone's coming forward that if folks online have a comment that you'd like to make, we'd love to hear it, and you can put it in the chat, and we can have it shared that way. Please, Nicole.
I noticed particularly when it was talking about being able to use AI for, legal advice. There have been stories in the news this week about why you shouldn't do that, because AI quite frequently gives wrong answers, cites statutes and studies that don't exist. It hallucinates them.
Yes, we learned about hallucination, which is the AI colloquialism for it lies. Right. Will is back in the back. Okay, just a moment, Will. Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, I don't have a question for you, but you know why we hung this exhibit.
Yes, and I'll speak about that in a moment. Thank you. Okay, we're going to Will in the back next after Dennis.
Question that seemed to come to me, I think I heard it properly. Does AI have courage? And it seemed that the answer was no.
Thank you for that. I think as they become smarter and smarter and can act more human-like, some people will someday maybe tell us, yes, that they do. But I always love to remember about courage, that the root word is kur, of the heart. Courage is an action of the heart. And it cannot, by definition, have that in the same way that we do. Yeah, Will, please.
Two things. One, I was listening to the radio this morning on my way here, and they mentioned how Uber was now using like driverless cars. And that reminded me of how machines are slowly replacing humans. Two, when I write on my blog, I tend to use Grammarly, and I've noticed that it will recommend the same, same words over and over again. Sure. For example, I'll use such as sometimes, but it always wants me to say like, because that's shorter.
Oh, sure.
And more efficient.
Yeah, thank you. And your own voice is different. Let's get Rilla, and we'll get then just a couple more, and then we'll be done. Go ahead.
The most important question is, well, it's not really a question, I guess it's just an observation, is that AI ethics are so relative. It depends on who's asking the question, what kind of answer you're going to get. So I think that, to me, is the central concern.
I think that leads into the piece that I think is so important that she chose not to mention at all, which is about the environmental impacts of AI. And Rhea, I may have just stepped on your line there.
I don't know. I have been taking art lessons online, and there's been a lot of talk about making sure that you don't infringe on someone else's copyright, because I'm a collagist. And my teacher, who I think I still respect, was very careful about that you have to use these websites to get these pictures, because these have all, been in the public domain, et cetera. And then she turns around and says, well, just get your images from ChatGPT, and you can just plop them right on your collage. And I refused to do it, which is, by the way, hard work to not do that. And I just feel disappointed and betrayed that somebody who protects copyrights would turn around and tell lots and lots of students to go ahead and use ChatGPT.
Thank you. We're going to do David and Sam, and I think that will be all. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I like the way it said that we shouldn't use AI as a format for saying, oh, just following orders. This is from the official verified source. We have to be able to challenge it. But I can see that happening, especially when it's scaled up and people are required to use AI. You can say, well, it was just the institutional whatever. But
yes.
It's a pitfall that it did well to warn us about.
And many of you have told me that your places of work are asking you to use AI more frequently for those emails and those scheduling and so forth. Let's get Sam, and I think that's gonna, Sam's, you're gonna have, do we have any from online? Okay, you're gonna be our last word here.
Circling back to what Ria was saying, it seems to me that a lot of the problem that I hear in the conversations about AI are not about that AI is violating copyright and using copyright illegally in some fundamentally different way than authors reading other people's books and sparking ideas is using copyright. It's that our current structure of copyright and ownership of ideas and words and imagery and pieces of of images and phrases, our structure of legality around ownership of intellectual property is just not built in a way to be able to handle AI. We don't have a legal framework that can handle it. We don't have an ethical framework that really addresses how to balance the rights of the creator with the rights of the listener who gets inspiration from the creator. And rather than arguing about AI is violating copyright or AI is not violating copyright, everyone that I talk to agrees that our copyright structure isn't, there is no way to handle it yet. So maybe we should be working on thinking through how to improve that first.
Yeah, that's great. I think that what I have come to at the end of this week is that the genie is out of the box. It's not going back in the box. And so how do we manage ethical consumption, and how do, like the town of Oak Haven, once they were using it, nobody was talking to each other. How do we continue to build this community where we work out the difficult ideas, where we don't have to agree with each other, where we have different perspectives on it, and we can be who we are here together? To me, if it spurs us to do that, it's worthwhile.